My video for February the 15th, 2020 is number 3367. The title is A World Divided Against Itself. In the previous video, I mentioned pagans in a more positive light than many might expect by someone like me who was raised in the Assembly of God. Assemblies of God, that's plural. Of course, I have been on a lifelong quest for answers to the really tough questions we face as humans. Yes, there are pagan tribes that were warlike, just as many religious people are in the modern world. However, there did seem to be exceptions. Of course, not all religious people are so ignorant as to think their viewpoint is the only right one. Unfortunately, many are stuck in that egocentric way of thinking. There have always been seers and prophets who could see something more than a mere tribal mentality. When we focus on the differences, we often come to insane conclusions that separate and create a war mentality. Honest prophets and true seers try to go beyond the narrowness of clannish thinking. Wisdom can never grow for those who stay in that prison mentality. Sadly, many seem trapped by us and them limitations. I assert that if humanity is ever going to experience peace on earth, we must establish common ground where we can have more rational conversations. This simply cannot happen for those with an egocentric mindset. You know, it's a funny thing because this is my video for the 15th, and at one point in time, my sister, who of course was raised as I was in the Assemblies of God, she actually used to pay tithes to me because I've always been oriented toward preaching on the streets and various evangelical and missionary type work. That's been my history throughout my life. But when I started looking at beyond the stretches of what I was taught, and as I mentioned in other things, when I subscribed to the Plain Truth magazine because my minister told me it was of the devil and I felt it was worth looking at more closely, I have been one that goes outside the boundaries. And much of my family still is within those boundaries and does not allow the kind of exploration that I've been doing. And therefore, sadly, I have been labeled as going to hell or some other. I don't know because there's no more real conversation. I do speak with a niece and a nephew from time to time, and of course my brother, my remaining brother, one brother that was a missionary, was killed. But I still communicate from time to time with a few members of my family. But for the most part, I am ostracized. Now, I did also have a talk with my youngest sister who is facing various health challenges. But this whole idea of paganism seems to be a foreign concept to many people that believe you have to either be a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim or a Hindu or a Buddhist and maybe some other religions. And in fact, atheism is like another religion that has its dogmatic viewpoints. Uh, and I can understand where some of those people who were friends of mine from church, I can understand some of the challenges they've gone through that caused them to, or inspired them, whatever, to think outside the box. And I've always been an outside the box thinker and an explorer. But I've had to pull myself out even from much of my social circle because of people wanting to butt heads. And you can't have rational conversations when you're pointing fingers at other people and saying, but you're wrong, but you're wrong. No, love, somebody that emphasizes love, as I've tried to do, that's the only way out. But I had somebody that's been commenting on my videos that came through with a comment that that I'm not, that I don't sound very loving. Well, pointing out the errors in our thinking and trying to get people to think rationally is loving as I see it. Now, of course, someone that thinks they have the answers doesn't see that as loving because they're stuck in their heads and stuck with a mindset that uh, that something is the right way. Love is the right way. Truth is the right way. Sharing and rational conversation and listening and trying to be open-minded enough to see how and why people come to the conclusions that they come to. And that includes people that converted from one religion to another. Everybody has their reasons. And you don't win anything by headbutting. You don't reach consensus by knocking the other person. And that's a human characteristic that we have, a characteristic. I put an S on that. I didn't mean to. It's a characteristic that we have as humans to think it from an egocentric point of view, that this is the way I see it. And of course, I wouldn't see it that way if I didn't believe it was the right way. But as soon as you start getting into right and wrong, you develop over ideological things. Now, there are right and wrong things. It's wrong to violate the free will of another human being. That's how I see it. Now, some people would say it's wrong to violate the free will of an animal, which is why they become vegans or vegetarians. But even plants are alive. Even plants show that they have feelings. So are we not supposed to eat it all? Are we supposed to become breatharians? You know, these are things that I have to wrestle with because they give you pause. But what it does for me is it puts me in a place where, from my point of view anyway, where I can at least look at something rationally. And I'm wondering, as I've said in so many videos, where and when is God and how is God supposed to take action to get us centered on loving, which has to begin with listening, which has to begin with getting rid of the idea that my particular viewpoint is the only one that's right because it's mine. That's craziness. That's insanity. And I want to overcome my own limitations. Yes, I'm limited by poverty consciousness because I realize that I don't have the wherewithal to travel and do some things that would be nice to be able to do. And in a sense, I don't even feel I can afford a loving relationship. So there's challenges that I face personally. And the world seems to be crazy and insane. And by the way, Anastasia, whom I've talked about in many videos, I'm talking about the one highlighted in Vladimir Megra's books, she would be considered a pagan. She was not part of any organized religion. And in fact, that was her heritage. That was her great grandfather and her grandfather who raised her because her parents were killed, as I've said in other videos, when she was just a little girl. And paganism is, from my point of view, not a religion. It's just about being human. It's just about recognizing the common ground, that we are here and there's a lot of questions and sometimes not a lot of answers. And we all need to be ones that quest and question what is right. How can I build bridges? How can I tear down or take down the walls of separation? How can I love others as I want to be loved? Thank you for listening, and namaste.